SoFi stock was up over 14% last week. It's up 35% in the last month, and in the last 3 months, it's up 86%. So this stock is looking bullish. It does look as if it wants to move higher. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a price analysis for SoFi, a future trade opportunity next week, and also share my thoughts on trade management if you're in this stock already, entering at $15. Let's take a look. I'd like to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/DavidB for the 5 best stocks to buy now. Use my special link to get $200 off their epic annual subscription. Now, if you find value in my analysis of SoFi stock today or other stocks on my channel, you may also find value in my email newsletter. If you subscribe, I'll share with you professional trading tips to help you make more profits trading stocks. I'll leave a link in the description below. Check it out. So SoFi stock was up 14% last week, and it's up around 24% in the last 2 weeks. So it's looking bullish, and it does look as if it wants to move higher. We can see on screen, looking at the weekly chart, that SoFi recently broke this unconfirmed trend line. It's found support around about this level of 859. It's moved up, created that first peak. Sellers have had a go. It has pushed back to around about 1270 before buyers have come back in. And the price now has moved up. It did trigger an entry around $15 a few weeks ago. And now it does look as if it wants to move higher. Now, based on the price action, you can see SoFi closed last week above this key level of around $18, looking very bullish. And it does look as if now that the probability is it's going to push higher and potentially over the medium term, move up and challenge around $24, $25. Beyond that, you can target the all-time high of around $29. So lots of upside for SoFi, with certain levels along the way to possibly consider taking profits. Now, I want to share with you today a possible entry strategy for SoFi next week based on the weekly chart, but also share my thoughts on some trade management tips so that if you're in this trade already, possibly entering at $15, what are your options moving forward? Before that, I want to mark up some key price levels. So first level I want to mark up is the all-time high created back in February 2021. So let's mark that one up. Now underneath that level, we've got these 2 peaks for SoFi. One was created in June 21, and this next one a few months later in November 21. It's around about $24, $25. So that's a key level and one that you can target for a possible take profit. Underneath that level, you've got this peak here of around about $18.40, created in February this year. So I'm going to mark that one up. You can see since SoFi traded up from support here around $5.94, $6, it surged up and made this price peak in January this year. And in the last few months, sort of 4 months, SoFi has been sold off heavily. It looks as if it's found support around $8.50 and now it's moving up. So underneath $18, there's a level that corresponds to this trough here. It's about $13.60. And you can see as well when SoFi moved up, it did pull back to find support before that last leg, before the peak. So I'm going to mark that up at $13.60. Under that level, we've got a price peak here around $11.66, $11.70, corresponding to this price action back in July 2023. There's also some resistance here for SoFi when price traded into this level here in December 2023 and also during June 23. So let's mark that one up. And under that level, you can see that SoFi has found support during this week here in April 2025, so a few months ago. It looks as if that level is around about 862, so let's mark that up. And also 592 appears to be a support level for SoFi, corresponding to this price action here in August 2024. And under that, we've got this level here that is around $4.20, corresponding to these price lows here. So you've got May 2023 and also December 22, where price found support. So based on these key price levels, SoFi closed last week high on the Thursday. It closed around $18.50 above this key level here of $18.35. So that's bullish. It's bullish because it closed high and it closed above that key price level. So it does look as if it wants to move higher and potentially move into this zone targeting $24 over the medium term. Now, if we zoom in on the weekly chart, we can talk about the weekly price action in more detail. So you can see since this significant price trough here in August 2024, SoFi really took off. It had a surge all the way up to this price level here of 17.21. There was some selling pressure. It was sold off over 4 weeks with some buyers taking profits, and it found support at 13.60 before having a second leg up with these two bullish bars. And it peaked out at around 18.37, and that was in January this year. So over the last 5 months, SoFi has been sold off. It did get sold off heavily, and it looks as if now it's found support around $8.61. Since that trough, it's broken this unconfirmed trend line. It does look as if now price is trending up. So from this trough here, you can see that price has increased significantly over a few weeks, and it peaked out here in the week of the 28th of April. It peaked at around $14.50, you can see here. Now, after that time, there was an inside bar, price moved up again, it pulled back, another inside bar, a strong bar here in the first week of June, and then it moved up again. Now, what you notice is in this week here, price did trade above this key peak here, which is positive, very bullish, but it didn't close for the week above this key level. This week, some selling pressure. This week, bullish, but again, didn't close above the line. This week, it actually traded higher. It traded up to about $15.20, but selling pressure once again, and it closed lower. So it wasn't until this week here, the week commencing 16th of June, so a few weeks ago, did SoFi trade up, break this key level, and it closed the other side, confirming the buyers are in control and they want to take the price higher. And the week after that, commencing 23rd of June, was a huge week for SoFi, even more bullish, with price trading from around $15 all the way up to a peak of $17.50, and it closed high around $17.19. And of course, last week, the short week, Monday to Thursday, there was more buying. Not as much as the week before, but buyers still came in, and it opened low and closed high. And most importantly, it closed above this key level of $18. So very bullish for SoFi. So based on Dow theory, an entry for SoFi stock was confirmed during this week here, the 16th of June. This was the week where price traded up and it closed above this trigger point here of $14.50. So essentially price traded up, it pulled back, and it's broken through this key line, closing the other side, confirming buyers want to go higher. So based on weekly rules, you could then have entered the stock the week after on market open around about $15. So if you did use these rules to enter on the weekly chart and you got filled around about that $15 open price on this week, the trade could set up something like this. So your first take profit target could be this key level of $18, and your stop loss could have been set around 15%, and that would correspond to this low down here of around $12.73. And that would give you a risk to reward of 1.44, which is acceptable. Now, of course, Thursday's closing price for SoFi was $18.57. So if you did enter at $15 on these rules, you'd now be in profit. You'd be up around 22%. So if you did that, well done, congratulations. Now, 22% profit is not too shabby. Some traders might take that, close their position and move on, or wait for a pullback and enter again. It all depends on your risk management style and obviously your profit targets. But I want to share some tips today in this video on what you might do, some options, if you did enter at $15 and perhaps you're considering whether to sell now or hold for more. So based on this trade, what are your options if you are in profit? Should you sell or should you hold? So I'll give you 4 options to consider if you did buy in at $15 and you are currently in profit. So your first option, obviously, is to sell everything next week on market open. So you then realize that profit of around 22%. Well done. Move on. Next trade. Other option is, if you think SoFi is going to move higher, it's going to keep going, then you could sell 50% of your position. So realize some profits, but leave some in the market to move higher. Option 3, you sell your original position. So the total capital you allocated, let's say it was $1,000, you sell that amount and you leave the profit you've made in the market to run higher. Option 4, you hold. You leave everything in there and you keep going and target $24. So 4 options to consider. And the final decision is going to be based on your own strategy and risk appetite. So if you think about risk, then obviously option 1 is the lowest risk. You sell and you make your money. Then obviously option 4, leaving everything in the market, is obviously the highest risk. But based on the price action, even if you hold, I think the risk is moderate because it does look as if SoFi wants to move higher. There might be a pullback next week, but I think long term, medium term rather, I think it wants to move higher. Ultimately, the decision will be yours to make based on your strategy. But 4 options to consider. So what about if you're not in SoFi stock yet and you're thinking about taking a position? Should you buy now or is it too late? I don't think so. I think SoFi's got more to give. The most obvious target, now it's pushed through $18, is going to be $24 up here. Now, it's quite a big increase, but it might happen over the coming weeks or months. So potentially, if you're trading on weekly rules, you could enter next week on confirmation. Essentially, the price has broken through this key level. It's closed above this key level of $18.40. So it does look as if buyers want to go higher. So a possible trade setup would be entering on market open next week, potentially getting filled around $18.50. Initial stop loss of $15.65, which is down here. That's around 15%. So with that target of $24, your risk to reward is going to be 1.88, which is a 30% upside. So still a decent trade entry on offer. However, one thing to consider, SoFi is looking bullish. It has had 2 strong weeks up. So we should expect 1 week now down. We should expect a pullback with some selling pressure. Don't forget, buyers who bought in down here or even here, they're going to be in profit considerably. So they may want to trade out of this now and move on. So if enough sellers come in and there's enough selling going on, price is going to pull back. If you do enter next week, obviously you're not going to get stopped out because having a stop down here, it's very unlikely that SoFi is going to actually reverse all the way from $18.50 and break $15. Now, one thing to consider with this entry $18.50 next week, I think this setup is perfectly okay if you're looking for, medium to long term. I think for a short-term trade, you may want to wait for more confirmation. I say that because SoFi is up 30% the last, 3 to 4 weeks. It's looking bullish, but it might pull back next week based on the price action. A pullback of, 10% is not unlikely. And so you may want to wait for what next week does to confirm that entry. So you could put your priced entry trigger above this peak here. Essentially what we're saying is, since this trough here, price has moved up. It's pulled back to find support. It's triggered an entry here for that initial trade of entry at $15. It's moved up now to this level here. So you can see, based on the size of this move up, this run, it's probably due a pullback, somewhere perhaps into, $17. That would be great. If it's really bullish, it might only pull back to around $17.50, and that might happen next week. So if it does that, you may want to wait for the week after or the week after that for price to take out this peak here and confirm it wants to go higher. So that's an option. Whether you enter next week on the weekly rules, or you wait for a pullback and enter after that, it's going to depend on your strategy, whether you're short, medium, or long term. I think if you're long term on SoFi, you can enter next week. But for a shorter term trade, perhaps you're going to trade it over 6 weeks. It's probably best to wait for the next pullback and enter after that. Let me know what you think about SoFi stock. Are you bullish on SoFi? What do you think of my trade management rules? I hope they're helpful. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.